take the first step. Think about the plans you make. How many of your ideas remain unstarted, your dreams unrealized? How many times have you said you would do it, but you didn't? You said you didn't have time. You said next month would be better. You made excuse after excuse until your idea melted into the realm of what could have been. There must be a way to change. Some way to get motivated. Some inspirational force out there that could jolt your system so that the next time you want to start that new hobby, make that career change, or start opening your heart to the world, that you're actually going to do it. Meet Marc Macaspac, a man who has lived more lives than you can count. He's here to reminisce about life, particularly as an immigrant who joined the U.S. Army as a helicopter pilot in Iraq, but only after touring with the Rolling Stones. He offers advice for veterans transitioning to the civilian world. He's been to every continent, 25 countries so far. He knows thousands of people. He does archery, marathon running, skiing, snowboarding, hosts an open mic, teaches aviation English, and plays the electric guitar in a band. He's here to show us how to turn your ideas into actions. Alright, my name is Vincent D'Iso. I'm here with Louis Risk and our guest today, Marc Macaspac. Thanks for being here today, Marc.
Hey, pleasure to be here.
I wanted you to check out Amazing Chai Oven. Have you ever been here before?
Yes, I think it's a great place. I come here not only for the tea, but for some of the musical performances and some of the projects that they have here. I think it's a great place.
Yeah, it's really cool. Like anybody who's visiting Prague for a weekend or a week, this is one of those places that you're not going to read about in like TripAdvisor or anything like that. You just got to come here and check it out, look it up. It's hard to even find. It's hard to spell. But if you do a little research, find this place. They got events every single night. And if you live in Prague, it's another thing. It's another kind of place where you want to check out. It's a bit of a cultural center for expats and local Czechs. What do you think, Louis?
Very high quality tea here.
And the
very
staff.
friendly staff too. Yeah,
they're pretty nice.
It's just a high quality place.
Great
all
people
around.
here.
Yeah, cool. So shout out to Andy for letting us do this. So anyway, again, I'm glad that you were able to make it tonight. The reason I invited you is because I was kind of racking my brain thinking about interesting people, and you're one of the most interesting people I've ever met in my life. Genuinely, I mean that. You do so many things. I don't know if I can name anybody else who does this much stuff. From archery to marathon running. You joined the military. You toured with the Rolling Stones. You were born in the Philippines, and your family emigrated to America when you were 3 years old. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So how were they received? I mean, this was, about 55 years ago, right? So
Yes, it feels like, yes, generally. Well,
America was a different place back then.
Yes, very much.
What was it like growing up? What do you remember from your early days?
Well, I grew up in Los Angeles, which is very multicultural. That made it a little easier. And what's a little funny, they originally assigned my family to Maine, which is, well, let's just say not exactly the most prime destination for a family that's from a Pacific island.
What do you mean assigned? The military?
No, they when you immigrate and you don't have relatives or anything, they actually tell you what state to move to.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and I didn't know that either, but my family was told we will move to Maine. But fortunately, we had other relatives here, and we said, we're going to visit with my aunt and uncle in Arizona first. And while we were in Arizona, my mother and father were able to find jobs in Los Angeles. So the California was just thriving at that point, and they found jobs easily. And we moved to Los Angeles in 1972, and that's where you might say my life began there. And I remember I had neighbors from everywhere, from India, from Korea, and of course regular Americans, African Americans. It was just a big mix, and that told me that that's just normal because you grew up in that. And so I grew up in a very multicultural environment, and as you say, living the American dream. Went to school there, went to high school, eventually university. Made friends of all cultures, and but I did very American things. In fact, my parents didn't really expose me to any of the Filipino culture. They just said, well, you're an American, eat hamburgers, hot dogs, fries,
Right.
play baseball.
Yeah, and you also understand that not every place in America is so diverse.
I found that out when I joined the military, and my first assignment was Alabama.
Right.
And-
How were you received there?
I felt like I was in a foreign country. In fact, at one point, I was in my full U.S. Army uniform, driving a Corvette, and you thought it was something out of Candid Camera or some prank show. State trooper pulls me over
Yeah.
and says, "You're not from around here, are you, boy?" And I thought, "Why do you say that, officer? You don't look like the others." I'm in the U.S. Army. I guess they take all kinds now.
Oh, wow.
And I thought, okay, is this a joke? And then I said, well, officer, did I do anything wrong? Nope, not yet. But I'm going to write you a ticket anyway. It's called a Welcome to Alabama ticket. Just to let you know we're watching you.
Wow.
Where in Alabama was this?
This was with the military base for helicopter pilots is Fort Rucker, but the nearest city you might say is Enterprise or Dothan, Alabama. They've been training helicopter pilots there since Vietnam War. And
So you were trained as a helicopter pilot?
yes, I am still a rated helicopter pilot.
You're a rated helicopter.
Let's go back. Well, growing up, did you have any goals? Any vision of what you wanted to do when you were older?
Actually,
how your life was going to be like?
When I actually had an essay that my teacher asked us to write, what do you want to be? What are your plans and goals? And she held it and mailed it back to us when we were in our 30s. And it was something that was written when I was 16. And I received it. And it said I wanted to be a pilot, government agent, and
James Bond, basically.
so basically something like that. And a pilot, an agent, and rock star once is what I wrote. And not in that order, but combined.
And how old about?
I was about 15, 16.
16.
And that didn't sit very well with my parents because they were very traditional.
Lawyer?
Lawyer
Yeah.
was what they wanted me to track. Go to Harvard, become a lawyer, start a law practice, and live happily ever
3 kids,
wife, kids, live happily
2
ever
dogs.
after. Exactly.
So when did things kind of change for you?
Well,
Like that wasn't the path that you were going to be on.
I always knew I liked flying. That's, I think, most little boys is, we think that flying is cool. But I guess I pursued it a little bit more, but much later. But
You mean actually like piloting?
yes, I was, exactly, I actually became one. But at first I was just learning, because of school orchestra, how to play violin. But then one day my cousin let me borrow his electric guitar when I was about 14 and showed me how to play a Van Halen song. And I watched the music videos, and you can see, what music videos were like in the 80s and 90s. It's about,
Awesome.
yeah. Before in the 70s, you just heard the music, which was still great.
And MTV.
But
yeah.
MTV,
Yeah.
and as you see, having fun, partying, all kinds of girls around, fast cars, and that changed my mind. Yeah, money, and my parents were aghast, but they did allow me to buy my first electric guitar.
Growing up, they were kind of strict.
Yes, very, and
They
exactly.
prevented you from doing a lot of stuff growing
Yeah,
up.
I wasn't. I was only on the swimming team and the baseball team, but I couldn't go on school trips anywhere
Oh wow.
or stay overnight any place. I had to be home by 10.
How did they feel about your decision to join the Army?
Actually, they thought I finally grew up, but I joined the Army at 28. That's the big thing. But when
Did you tour with the Rolling Stones before you joined?
Exactly.
I see.
I finished university with a film and television degree and went to Hollywood for a year and did basically TV commercials. In fact, one of them even ended up on the Super Bowl that I worked on. But you don't get recognition for that. Not like movies where your name are in the
Yeah,
credits.
the credits, right.
If I told you to, hey, I did a Budweiser commercial, that's great. Can you prove it? No, not really. But so maybe at that point I wanted a little recognition, especially for my parents. But instead, I just got a nice big paycheck, which is not bad either. But telling people I work on commercials isn't as exciting as I worked on this film, which at the time was the way to get recognition. So
And being in Los Angeles too, right? You're just around it all the time.
exactly.
But you think that the desire for recognition was a trait of a younger Marc Macaspac? Now you're not looking for recognition anymore. You're doing things that you love, right?
I just do it because I love it. But
Yeah.
at the time, I think maybe to please my parents, to say, look, this is what I do or what I've done. And even when I got hired by the Rolling Stones, they thought I was just hanging out with Mick and Keith and not really working.
Yeah.
Even though I showed them the video screen, I showed them all the things I worked on, and they just thought, you still don't have a real job until I joined the Army. Then they were happy. They said, he finally has a real job at the age of 28.
So you really had a desire to prove something to your parents, and that's is that one of the things
I think please
was
your
driving
parents. You want your parents to be proud of you, and that's something that strive for. I think, especially in your teens and your early 20s, you have your own goals, but at the same time, you're still very close to your parents. And maybe you're still living with them, or you're just freshly out of the house. So that was part of it, yes. But the Army was not because I wanted to be in the Army purely, but because I was given the opportunity to be a helicopter pilot. That was the big turning point. Because I had to quit the Rolling Stones to join the Army, and you can imagine what that type of decision was like. I had to quit on them in the middle of a tour. We were about to go to South America, and I just finished the North American tour with them. We were very successful.
Well, tell us a little bit about what you actually did for these
what
tours.
happened after I finished in university? As I told you, I was doing commercials, and then I was able to blend video footage with music to make, well, as you now we call them music videos, but
Right.
back then
That
it was
was
like some background
Yeah.
stuff while music
you're
played.
one of the pioneers of music videos.
I don't know if we want to say that, or like I'm just like Forrest Gump. I was
you
doing,
were there in the early
I was
stages.
doing
of it.
something
Yeah.
what was happening at
You
that
did
time.
it by accident, and now it's
Yeah.
all over the world.
Yeah, and then Mazzy Star hired me, and they said, we have a problem. We don't like moving around or engaging with the audience on stage. They were a very shy band. So can you put some images up on the screen so that the audience will focus on that instead of us?
Yeah.
So I took scenes from sci-fi movies, really abstract things, and I just thought, how can I match that to the music? Since I did have some music background, and I liked music, I did that, and the band was quite happy with it. So when the Rolling Stones took it to another level, with Mazzy Star, we were hanging a bed sheet in the back, taking an old projector,
Yeah.
and then we move on to the Rolling Stones, who have a 1 million pixel screen that they're renting for $1 million a month,
Wow.
so that the people in the back can see.
So the Stones hired you after working for Mazzy Star.
That's correct. And they said, okay, that guy seems to do a fine job. So I got hired by them, and I went from a bed sheet to a 1 million pixel screen for the Bridges to Babylon tour. And that was a mind-blowing experience.
Tell us about the band.
Mick Jagger is the business manager behind the band. He's not just the rock star, the lead singer. He knows where every penny is going, how it's being spent. He's very demanding, but I respect that.
He's the boss of bosses.
He is
for
the
the
boss.
Stones.
Everybody reports to him,
Yeah.
every expense. But I'll say this, he paid the crew very well, and he expected the best from them. So if you made a mistake, he called you out on it, and not in a very kind way.
Well,
But
did you make any mistakes?
several. The screen didn't work perfectly all the time. He called me up in the middle of a concert in Dodger Stadium with all my family there. I was proud to show them.
look at what I'm
Look,
doing.
I worked for the Rolling Stones, and one pixel was flickering. And then Mick turned around and said, "Oh, the screen doesn't look very good tonight. I don't like that very much." That was my cue to put on a harness, climb up and repair that 1 pixel while they were doing an acoustic set. So.
Is there video of that?
Not of that scene, but if you go on YouTube and type Bridges of Babylon tour, you'll see this giant oval video screen that I was responsible for.
I guess that was before smartphones, so nowadays
Yeah.
there'd be 1,000
Grainy
videos of that.
footage.
Though what I did do was, before the invention of the word selfie, I stood in front of the camera so that my face was on this giant video screen and took a picture. And I still share that with people. And I said, no one will ever believe I actually worked for the Rolling Stones unless I start taking pictures now. In fact, again, another thing I was on the forefront of, when the first digital cameras came out, 320 by 240, they were about $500, made by Kodak and Casio. I bought one, and I loved it because it had the little screen in the back, and you knew when you took a picture if it was good or bad. I don't know if you guys ever remember back with film, you take some pictures, and then you're excited, and you get them back blurry, out of focus. But with a digital camera, you can just take as many as you want as your memory card allows. And this one's good. This one's good. And my favorite story is I was backstage, and one of the opening bands were the Foo Fighters. And Dave Grohl came up to me and said, "Hey, what's that gadget you have?" I said, "It's a digital camera. How does it work?" "I'll show you." So I put my hand out on what you now call a selfie, and I took a picture and I showed it to him. And he said, "Wow, that's pretty cool. I need to get one of those." And I still have that picture nowadays. It's me and Dave Grohl showing him what a digital camera is.
Wow.
And he was a really nice guy. And
Is that in a portrait now, like above your study?
It should be, yes. It's just something I share on Facebook all the time when people talk about that. So
is that a chapter of your life that you look back on? And is there any way of like kind of contextualizing that and saying what you learned about that whole experience?
What I learned from that experience was just pursue whatever you are either passionate or enjoy, and don't get caught in something you don't enjoy because you need a paycheck or something. Because if you're
Make your parents happy.
Yes, exactly. Please your parents or please society. And so I went on something that was I didn't go for it for the money. The money did come eventually, but I did it because I thought it was something I would enjoy, and fortunately it worked out. And the Rolling Stones weren't even a band I liked back then. I was into heavy metal bands, so they were just a client. But it was a very, very good experience, and to see how the music business worked. And I got to meet more people, because before I was just in Los Angeles. And I got to see what all Americans were like, and to see what's like. So you can imagine, we played in the Meadowlands, and we stayed in New Jersey. So I met many people and I saw exactly how different Americans were, but that we're still one big country, and we have a bond. But then you imagine, then I go to Idaho, and then I go to the South, and I go to Minnesota and New Orleans, and you see the accents, you see the different food and things, but it's actually made me very amazed by the country. But I did see all of America maybe 4 or 5 times by the time I was 25. So after that, I was ready to see more, which I guess is, as I mentioned to you, with Mazzy Star, I saw Europe, and that really opened my mind that I needed to see a little more of the rest of the world, because I had already toured America many, many times over, and I was just ready for more. Which
is that one of the reasons why you joined the military, other than the piloting?
Yes, because there was an opportunity to see the rest of the world. And to make it clear, we were not involved in any war when I joined at the time.
What year did you join?
1998. And America had just finished what we call the Bosnia War as part of the peacekeeping force. And as you know, the Soviet Union had collapsed 8 years before. We had no threat of
anything.
Like, so
save times to be in the military.
To be in the military during peacetime is one of the best things. I think you understand that, Vince. If there's no war going on, you're just doing training, and you're collecting a nice check, and you have nice benefits.
Unfortunately, I don't know much of that experience, because I joined just before 9/11.
Oh, just before. Okay.
Yeah, yes. I didn't have the good times.
I had 2 years of the good times, as I told you, because I joined in 1998. And
which branch?
No, U.S. Army.
U.S. Army. Okay.
Yes. And I trained in Fort Rucker, Alabama, and then my first assignment was in the border of North and South Korea,
Wow.
8 kilometers. So we were flying missions on the border, and that was the most exciting thing during peacetime because that technically, the DMZ is still war, and they were actually doing some crazy things back then that you don't see in the news. They would send airplanes over the border, and then we'd have to chase them back.
The North Koreans, you mean?
Yeah, the North Koreans would be just provoking us.
But nobody would fire anything.
They didn't have specific missions. They were flying sorties. They were just
doing things to provoke.
really.
They even sank
yeah.
a ship, a South Korean ship that was fishing. They sent a boat over, sank it, just to say, we can do it.
What do you mean by they kill the fishermen?
Yes, they actually did. And we thought we were going to war. We had everything armed and ready. And then politicians stood down. Colin Powell came to visit. They fired a missile overhead.
Yeah.
Things that you don't even see now because we didn't have social media then. They would have soldiers taking pot shots at the guys across, and
basically saying, "Come at me, bro."
yeah, just provoking. So,
Yeah,
what are you going to do?
Yeah.
We forget how long this conflict has been going on.
The
3 generations.
50s.
The
Yeah.
50s.
50s.
Yeah.
And,
Stuff like this has been happening.
And they love to provoke because they know they can, because we can't really respond the way that we'd like to.
All that war, pretty
Yeah,
much.
exactly.
Does the South ever provoke or do anything along those lines?
No, the South was just
They just kind of sit there
Yeah.
and
Get
let them do these things.
picked on.
So you were flying helicopters during this time around
Yes,
the border.
on the border. You might call it like a border patrol. So
Wow.
yeah, that was because before there was the Iraq War. That was the most exciting mission you can have.
You went to Iraq.
Then what happened after 1 year in Korea? I was sent to.
Wait, what year was this when you
That
went
was
to Korea?
2000 to 2001.
Okay. So then 9/11 happened.
Yes. Well, I moved to Germany in July of 2001. Okay, and 9/11 happened, of course, in September, and so I arrived in Germany in July of 2001, and again, post Cold War, no
Just hang out
major
in Germany,
conflict.
drink some beer every now
Just
and again.
drinking beer. The base is open for visitors. And then 9/11 happened, and the whole world turned upside down. Of course, we were deployed all the time. You get 1 year on, 1 year off. The security is incredibly tight at the base. People are nervous. You don't know who's a terrorist, and Then, what was ironic, before sending us to Iraq, we were still sent for a 6-month mission in the Balkans, and so we did 6 months there, and then we went to Iraq in 2003, or I did, and we did 13 months there.
You were just doing. You were piloting helicopters
Yes,
throughout this
I
whole
was
time.
flying helicopters.
Which
then.
which kind of helicopters?
OH-58D. It's no longer in service, but you call it a scout helicopter, and it's reconnaissance. It flies in front of the troops, and
Is it armed?
yes,
Heavily?
Well, 50 caliber machine gun and 3 rockets or 2 missiles.
Okay.
But
Not quite like an Apache or something.
no,
like
not
that,
quite
but
as heavy as an Apache at all.
You can fend people off if you need to.
And not as heavy as the drones now. The drones now can carry so much more. In fact, the drones have pretty much replaced most of the mission that my helicopter used to do because it's safer, and I can't argue with that. And then,
Tell us about the experience in Iraq.
oh wow, that's 55 Celsius. I don't know what that is anymore in Fahrenheit.
It's hot.
It's very hot. Let's say 116 degrees, if anybody can imagine that, but not in shorts and t-shirts.
Yeah.
You're in full military gear with the gloves and the helmet, and in the case of pilots, with the flight helmet and a vest and everything. And it was a harrowing experience, especially in the early parts. There were no rules, no...
We had
didn't-
missions, right? I mean,
yes, we're just searching for things and seeing if anybody's doing anything. So
How's
You
your
were,
mind?
you were like a police force.
yeah, we're the occupation force, as you would call it.
Occupational
Yes,
force.
so we were flying around, making sure no one was attacking anybody. Basically, like if the ground soldiers call saying they need assistance, we we go there and assist them in any way.
Now, did you have the opportunity to speak with any local Iraqis while you were there, or were you secluded to the base?
I found a way to do it, and that's because to try to help the locals, they would let local Iraqis actually open up little shops on our base. And there was a couple guys that made food for us. And the ones that I started speaking to were these men that made tailored suits. And I like suits. And I collect them from different countries. And this man made me a nice suit that I still have to this day. And I asked him, well, you're a very good tailor. How long have you been a tailor? And he said, no, I'm a university professor in physics. I'm just doing this to make some money from you and the Americans because we can't operate the university right now. There's a war going on. That really woke me up, the situation. And you understand war, but what the civilians are going through.
Yeah.
Did you get a feel from the local people? I mean, how did they look at you? When they saw army guys with guns and camo policing the area, were they hopeful in the beginning?
That's a good question, Vince. Because I was there for more than one tour, in the beginning they were hopeful.
They were.
They felt we were there to help. But then when we didn't leave, they started getting resentful. I think any country would be. You claim they would be there to liberate, and they're liberated, and we're still there. And then trying to establish a new government, trying to establish their army and infrastructure. And then people started rising up against both the U.S. forces, and then there were outside forces influencing that as well.
So you were there during the sectarian violence.
Exactly, and that was a really difficult one. Yeah, Sunnis versus Shiites and then the Kurds in the north. And I don't think...
What were your missions like during that phase?
It was very confusing. We're trying to keep them from fighting each other, but at the same time, they wanted to fight us too. So you're trying to be the peacemaker, but you're also viewed as the enemy.
Is it hard to choose a side? Not necessarily for you, but for the officers and for the people making decisions back home.
I still don't quite understand what was going on there, to be honest with you, because we didn't understand enough of their culture. I think you really, if you're going to be involved in the country's politics and trying to reshape it, you should really know. I did not know there's Sunnis and Shiites and Kurds. I learned that after I was there, and what feelings they have for each other or dislikes, and that it's not
centuries old rivalry.
Exactly, it's not like anything you see in the movies where you just have a good guys and bad guys, opposing army, and
it's
good guys.
Clear cut.
It was very clear cut, and it wasn't like that at all. Even in Korea, we had North and South Korea. It was clear. But this was something completely confusing, and who to help, who's our allies, who's the enemy. And they had no army to fight against us with. They were basically guerrilla warfare. So there was civilians dressed up. I mean, they had no uniforms. They had no markings. So it's just whenever violence flared up somewhere, we tried to react to it and try not to hurt as many locals as possible. But you don't know, because it is the locals that are doing it, but they blended in with...
Did you change at all during this time? Like your mindset or how you viewed the world or humanity?
Well, I changed how I viewed war. I think all of us, all we knew about war was what you see in movies and TV, unless you had family that was in the Vietnam War, which...
So this romantic view of what
exactly.
you were doing. Yeah.
And I didn't quite understand the feeling of Vietnam veterans coming back, because as you know, there was a negative stigma with that war, but I didn't have family involved in that because we immigrated from the Philippines. So after that, I got a little bit better feeling that war is not like TV and movies. It's a traumatic thing. People die, and they don't die like on TV. It's a slow and painful and gruesome thing to see, and you don't know why sometimes, because it's not clear cut, and that really changed the way I thought about things. And so it made me, shall we say, do my homework more on everything ever since then, because I got involved with something that I didn't quite understand.
Can you talk about some of the other soldiers you served with, particularly people that were in your squadron or platoon, whatever you call it?
Yeah, squadron. And
what did you see happen to them?
of course, we had this high stress level. Some became very anti-war, and they left the military soon after. Others,
Did they complain like during a mission? Or?
yes, yeah, we would have some gripes about it because we couldn't see a clear-cut end to this. There wasn't like World War II. If you defeat
Right.
Hitler or Japan,
We're moving past a certain
Yeah,
point,
and-
the war's coming to an end.
Right. This seemed like something that would just go endlessly, and as you know,
Morale drops.
yes, and it continued long after I left, and Afghanistan still continues. And if you can imagine, I'm just speaking for myself. If you know every other year you're going back there, and you're not seeing what you think is progress, maybe a politician would say that I don't see the big picture, but all I know is that every other year I'm going back there, and I'm not really sure why or what we're accomplishing. And so that led to me to leave, which some of my other colleagues did too, and the others stayed.
Yeah.
They believed, and I respect them for that too, but some didn't believe, and we just had a difference of opinion, you might say. But we all did our time, as we say, and I felt.
So what year did you end up leaving?
Oh, I left. I became actually short. I left in 2005, but then I got hired as a contractor to go back there. And
As a contractor?
yes, and
So how does that work?
I became a contractor working on just some aviation things, and it was more comfortable than being a soldier because one, you wore civilian clothes. And you didn't have to follow military protocol, and you lived on a nicer base.
You got a lot more pay, didn't you?
You got
As a
that's
contractor.
the main reason.
A lot of military guys do that to get the experience.
Stick-
Then they try to get a job in the defense industry.
That's exactly what happened. I just used my technical skills, and I got paid really well. But in the end, we were still spending 13 months in Iraq or 16, and being away that long. And so I did 2 more tours of Iraq as a contractor, saved some money, lost some of it in the economic collapse of 2008, but that happens. And then I finally said, I can't live this life of going back and forth to Iraq or Afghanistan. So I left and I moved here.
I want to ask you a similar question that I asked you earlier, but
Yes.
about this period of your life. When you look back on this chapter, how do you contextualize it, and what are the lessons, the deepest lessons you learned, and what sort of regrets do you have about it?
Well, I don't regret doing it because it led me to where I am now, but it did change me. I don't regret joining the Army. I did it because I wanted to serve and I wanted to fly, and I got both those things. Then I realized I was maybe in over my head, what exactly we do. But even though I decided to leave the Army, I still stayed to be a contractor for the money. I didn't necessarily like going to deployments. I don't think anybody likes to be away for that amount of time, but
Money
of course,
talks.
money does talk, and then you want to create a future for yourself. So I hung on for a few more years for the money, and that maybe you might say was the only regret. Maybe I should have started my new life doing something else earlier, but I stayed there for the money. And then, as I told you, I lost quite a bit of it in 2008. I put a lot of money in the stock market, and then 2008 went very badly. So I'm not that spiritual a guy, but you might almost say it was karma. I did time there, but I was able to pay off debts and things, so that was fine. However, it meant that I started the age of 40 never having lived my 30s because it was all spent in war. So socially, I was 10 years behind and still not married, and still not with family. So I restarted my life at 40 here in Prague without any real social interaction for 10 years, if you can imagine that, and trying to be a normal guy again. And that's still an ongoing process even now. But then I did learn, just do what you enjoy. Don't chase the paycheck, because I had an opportunity to continue being a contractor. I still had an opportunity to rejoin the army if I wanted to. Some of my colleagues who did not find a good work in the civilian sector went back.
Mm-hmm.
And
even though they didn't really want to.
They didn't want to, but it's all they knew.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, I think I can find something else new.
So that never crossed your mind? You were
No, I could not go back.
That.
I could not do something that I was not passionate about anymore. That's the biggest lesson.
Yeah.
Just do what you enjoy. I think anybody, like what you're doing with the podcast, you're doing something you're not chasing money for doing this. You're doing something you believe in, you enjoy, and these sort of things work out over time.
You're right. I know that there's a lot of guys that have the feeling that they want to get out of the military, and you hit the nail on the head there. They don't know anything else. They want it. They can't. They can't. They talk about leaving, and when it's crunch time, they re-enlist.
You're exactly right. There were so many of my fellow guys.
Yeah.
We all said we're ETSing as soon as we get home.
ETSing is leaving.
This is military jargon for terminating your service.
Yeah.
And I was the only one who did it. The others said, well, but
bad economy.
we have a house. They're providing a home for my kids, and I get extra pay because I'm married, as you know.
Yeah.
The part of the way the military keeps you close, you get higher pay when you're married than when you have kids. Mm-hmm. And they provide if you're with a family, they provide you a house.
That's smart.
And if you have kids, they provide them with school, even in Germany or Korea.
That keeps you in.
They take care of your family to keep you in. Fortunately, I was single. Yeah, unfortunately or fortunately, however you want to look at it, I was a single guy. I got offered a very big bonus to come back, and I just said, no, my heart's not in it, so I left, and I moved here, and
if you could go back in time, what sort of advice would you give people that want to leave the military and just don't have the courage? And also, what sort of advice would you give people that have left and are having a really hard time transitioning into the civilian world? That's a very serious issue. We have high suicide rates for veterans.
Yeah, this is a tragic thing. So when you know you want to leave, like I knew a year out, maybe even more, start saving the money. Okay, so that means eat at the chow hall or don't go to the restaurant every night. Start saving everything and put the money away so that you have time to find a new line of work. Start applying for jobs. I was applying for jobs even while I was in Iraq using the slow internet there. I was looking for any possible job just to get restarted again and start making contacts with people. So obviously if you want to get out, plan ahead. You can't just say, I'm going to get out and I'm going to start looking. That you won't have enough money to survive, and then you could get desperate, or it'll make you afraid to leave. And get in contact with other friends who are working that you grew up with or or other soldiers like myself who have successfully did it. Now that we have, back then there was not so many forums on the internet, but now if you type soldiers after they got out, there's some type of site like that, you can find something, and there is hope that you can do it. And think about the skills that you learn. Some soldiers are able to find something. Like I said, I took the contractor job. Unfortunately, that meant going back to Iraq. But let's say you just go to work in the defense industry without being deployed, and things that you don't count that are tangible. Like I did not realize that I had the ability to be a teacher because I had to lead. You know how it is when you're an NCO or officer.
Right.
You have to lead. You have to give briefings, and nobody thinks that could lead to a teaching job. And I'm not by any means saying all soldiers should become teachers or airmen or anything, but it does mean you have the ability to organize.
You gain those skills that can translate over.
Exactly, and all of these can translate. And America, on the fortunate part compared to other countries, America does respect their military. And if you apply for a job saying I'm a former soldier and I have these things to offer, there is a good chance that people will at least let you have that interview. And
a lot of times they are legally binded.
Exactly.
They have to prioritize veterans over more qualified candidates.
And then when
it's kind of not fair,
but it's something that we have, and you need to take advantage of it.
Exactly.
It's a benefit,
and if you're a veteran.
And yes, you're absolutely right. I didn't even use that. I knew it was there, but because I moved to Europe, then it didn't apply. But if I had returned back to the United States, I would have used every possible benefit. And they don't inform you of all of them when you get out. So you have to do your homework. You need to contact the VA and say what exactly is off. VA has job programs. And then I found out through you, and we have this thing we paid into called the GI Bill.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, and I remember talking to you when I first arrived in Prague, and I said, I can't use my GI Bill because they only allow you to go to school in the United States. And then Vinny was here in Prague getting his school paid for, and first thing I said is, how do you do that? And you actually opened the door for me because I went to a school here. They said they never heard about it. I told them what you did. Fortunately, somebody did the research. And then the biggest break I had, other than meeting you and talking about that, the dean of the business school was an ex-soldier that was in my unit he got out before I joined, but still there's a certain bond between members of the military. And he said, wait a minute, you were in the 1st Infantry Division? I said, yeah. Were you in the Balkans? Yeah. I said, and you want to use the GI Bill? I said, yeah. And then he said, let me call up the VA. Next thing you know, I'm attending university here, and my master's degree is being paid for. Yeah. So it's there for us. You need to use it. And many soldiers don't think, wow, I really don't feel like going back to school at the age of 25, 30. I went to master's degree program at the age of 42.
Right on. And you got it done.
And I got it done.
And what's your master's degree in?
It's in public speaking and public relations, which we would talk about. I used to be nervous talking in front of people.
That's a great thing. You could give us advice because public speaking is the number one fear of people, right?
Exactly.
So maybe you can tell us some tricks or some pointers how the rest of us can kind of get over that fear.
Yes. Okay. Well, one is when you're standing in front of a crowd of people, look at the back of the room.
The back of the room.
The back of the room, and it looks like you're looking at them. Once you get more comfortable, then you can look at the people that you know, because you know they're not going to give you stone cold face or something. So they'll talk to you, look at you, do that. I have very hard time with eye contact, but as you see in this interview, I'm able to do it now. They taught me that. Just make brief eye contact so they know you're engaged. Because if you're talking, looking at the ceiling or at your feet, how would you two feel if some speaker is not looking at the audience? So that was one, and that made me a better teacher. And then later when I got into music, I also had to look at the audience, and that was some of the things there. And then they taught us things like move your hands around so you look like you're just certain motions when you're pointing at something.
Keep the audience attention.
Exactly, but don't have that closed body language like talking like this. Just keep moving. Walk. That helps you with your nervousness too. Go from one side of the podium to the other. Keep them going. And then
everyone's kind of different, right? Some people might like walking, and other people might not like walking.
Yeah, they might be static. Yes,
you have to find exactly what's comfortable for you.
Exactly. But then again, then have a plan. So when you go up, one of the first things they say, icebreaker. Just ask the audience a question, something funny, or something interesting, or there's some world event going on.
Yeah.
It could be something even as simple as, what do you think of the weather today? Anything, just to loosen them up. and then know what you're up there to talk about, and talk about it, and then ask if you have any questions or anything according to your plan. And that was a very good part, because our class was about 22 students, and we had to practice every day with that. And
One thing that's applicable about that experience, you could say, when you have something you're afraid of, the best thing to do is just confront it and do it step by step. You don't have to jump all the way into the pool if you're afraid of swimming, but put your foot in
fact,
put your leg in next time.
you're asking about some of my life philosophies, Vince. That's exactly what I do. I face my fears head on. I have a fear of heights. I was a helicopter pilot.
Is that what drives you? You're afraid of something, you want to overcome it?
Yes, exactly. And this is the one that's funny. Now, my two biggest fears are females and heights.
Females, we're gonna have to save that for another podcast.
Yes.
But
So what I try to do is surround myself with as many as possible.
Why do you think that is?
Because I don't understand them at all, and I don't think I ever will. Men and women are different. You knew that, and it's showing it in a way, and they're biggest mystery in the world to me.
So you're still single, right? Like,
Yes.
You're not married.
Not married, no.
Have you ever been close and like had a
Yeah, I've
girlfriend
had
or-
relationships that have been good, some that have been bad, and in between. And I enjoy the company of them, but I'm completely bewildered by them.
Is that something that you thought about when you were younger? You know, getting married, having kids. living
Actually,
kind of
it
like
was
a
on my
stable-
letter that I should be married with kids at this time. But I don't know if the word blame is fair, but I blame the war because I was I had no social life from the age of 31 to 40.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to meet somebody when you are in. So I consider this my 30s is right now, even though I'm about to turn 49 next week. But no, I'm very happy living here and with my interpersonal relationships. And then the heights, I did a bungee jump. I won't do ski jumping because I can actually get hurt doing that. But I like indoor rock climbing. And I'm absolutely terrified when I'm at the top. So what I do, I stand up there and I stare down as long as possible. It just makes me sweat more.
Is that helping?
Yes, I think it's, as I said, I hate running, but I run because I like the feeling at the end. And when I do something like rock climbing or do a bungee jump or stand on top of a mountain looking down, it's a feeling of accomplishment and a little bit of overcoming whatever.
Can you point to something that was the scariest thing that you've ever done that you've overcome?
I don't know. I never overcame it, but in New Zealand, I did the bungee jump off the Kawaru Bridge. It's the first bungee jump in the world, and I want to say it's, I don't know how many feet. I want to say this is like 35 meters. It's a long way down. And I opted for the head dunk into the river.
That was an option.
Yes. And I said, yeah, I'd like that. And I stood there.
You paid for that?
I paid for that.
Extra $10.
I paid $50
to get your head
to get your head
dunked
dunked
at
in the
end
water.
Yeah. So I stood there and I was frozen. I couldn't move.
Wouldn't that hurt? That didn't hurt?
I don't remember any of it.
Oh. You pass out on the way down?
No, it was such a... Well, I'll explain. So I stood at the edge and I couldn't move. And so I started moving 1/8 of an inch by 1/8
you're like,
of an
I'm not
inch.
going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm not going to do this.
I'm going to do it.
Yeah, just not.
I
no,
just don't know if it's going
yeah.
to take 50 years.
Yeah.
So I kept going. And then finally, the phrase leap of faith. I just said,
Good
well,
point.
hey,
It's been a good one.
I'm going to do it. And I jumped and I screamed the whole way down. But as soon as the bungee caught and my head went in the water, it went from morbid fear to euphoria of
Just
the
ecstasy.
level. Yes. And
Wow.
and what's funny is you're bouncing on the wire. You're still going up and down, but I wasn't scared anymore. And it was, I was just complete joy that I overcame that. And I'm getting less and less bold. I recently had an opportunity just to jump 10 meters into a river, and I couldn't do it. But maybe because I'm getting older. But I know I did that bungee jump and I overcame something. And yeah, so I like to face fears. And one of the biggest fears for anybody is failure.
Yeah.
And could I be a failure as a teacher? Can I be a failure in okay, I wasn't a good runner. I was a horrible runner when I first started. In fact, a man with one leg outran me in the 10K. Somebody not, and I don't mean the type with the prosthetics.
Yeah.
Somebody who did not have the leg there and was on crutches. And
Out crutched you?
actually, it motivated me. That's the good part. I did not let it crush me. And I said, I'm feeling sorry for myself. And here's this man with one leg. He's not complaining.
Yeah.
So I got in better shape, and I became a better runner, and I'm at a point where I'm happy. And I feared marathons. I thought you would die, and I did one. I trained really hard for it, and since then I've done 6. And I never thought I could run that far. In the Army, 2 miles, and that was it. I was done. I was collapsed.
Well, so Mark, you've done so much in your life. I want to give you the last word. What kind of advice, what kind of wisdom can you share with the rest of us?
Don't be embarrassed. Try something new. The first class I taught completely bombed, and I just got up, learned what I made a mistake, did it again. First race I ran, beaten by a one-legged man, and now I perform really well. Almost everything I've tried for the first time, I failed miserably, but you need to take that first step.
Get over the embarrassment.
Exactly. Embarrassment won't kill you unless you allow it to trigger a heart attack or something. I don't mean try something new that can actually kill you, such as I'm going to be a skydiver and not take lessons. No, I mean do it with a plan. Okay, I want to be a runner. I'll train. But then go out and run that race. Don't spend the time training. Or I want to try a new career. Learn how to do it. Get a job interview. If you get fired, get up and try again. And embarrassment's a very hard thing, and it's part of our pride. But let go of that, and success will eventually come your way if you do it with passion and belief. But I do believe have a plan. Don't go recklessly into something. But if you plan what you do and you believe in yourself, and don't worry about embarrassment. Don't worry about what other people say that they're telling you you're horrible or you're a failure. Just believe in yourself and keep going. And you can literally do anything you want. And that's what I'm doing now. I just do what I enjoy. And I'm not trying to win or be the best. I just want to make sure I enjoy what I'm doing. And obviously I'm not hurting anybody or myself. So I don't see any reason why anybody else should do that too. And that's why I'm impressed about your podcast. You went on with something that you believed in, and you want to get a message out to people, and you believe in it, and you're passionate about it. And as I said,
it's like you're very positive too. You know, you keep a good attitude about everything.
I think the positive attitude is very important for anything, and you have to try, because there's many cliches out there, but you miss 100% of the shots you never take. You have to try. You probably will fail, but if you don't, then hey, great. You go on with yourself. I'm not one of those guys. I failed at everything first time.
That is why you succeed.
Yeah, and I just get right back up and do it again. And unless I am actually physically injured and unable to do it again. So that's why I'm not a ski jumper. So that's about the only thing I probably will never do. Everything else, I'm very open-minded to, and I'll give it a shot. And why not? It just makes you grow as a person to try something new. And you were talking about getting bored or being complacent. Just find something and try it. And I'm sure there's other people that will see that you're interested, and they will even help you along the way. I don't mean expect that, but that's what has happened to me every time. Every time I tried and failed, somebody noticed, and maybe they remembered when they started out, and then they'll help pick you up. And then, of course, remember that too. If you become successful in something and you see somebody struggling, help them out. And that's what I try to do now in sports, and which we didn't get to talk about music.
Next day, you're coming back, man, for sure.
With music, I was completely mortified about playing in front of an audience, and now I host an open mic. And I play every night.
Or you host an open mic.
Yes. And I help musicians who have never played live before. I am more happy to have a musician play for the first time live at our place and help them gain confidence than to have an established musician play and show how good they are. That's fine. It's entertaining, but I'm much more happier when I see somebody play for the first time and the joy on their face, or maybe the terror on their face. But then I tell them, well, you got it out of the way. You're no longer somebody who's never played live before, so
It's a stepping stone.
yeah, just continue on.
You really showed us that thin line between joy and terror.
Yes.
Okay. All right, Mark, thanks for coming.
It's my pleasure.
Thanks for the kind words about the podcast, and I'm already looking forward to having you back.
Okay, I look forward to that too.
All right, thanks a lot, Mark.
All right, guys, that was great.
Hey, thanks for watching this episode of Do This With Your Life. Now, I've got a question for you. Do you know anyone specifically that you think this episode could help? If so, please share this podcast with that person. The purpose of this show is to help people overcome challenges, solve problems, and take the next step in life. If you think that's a worthy cause, please visit our website, dothispodcast.com, and click on the button to become a patron of our show. Any little donation helps. We're also on Facebook and Twitter. There you can follow us, you can leave comments, ideas for future shows, and receive notifications every time we release an episode. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and remember, you are the reason we do this podcast.